No, my pleasure, brother. It's an honor. Like whatever I have to do next, I don't like to rush time. After you had cancer and live, we survived Chicago as Black men. I don't like to rush because what we talking about is important, and it's rare that we get together to talk about issues like this. All the politicians belong to the people. We represent the people. So I'm available to answer questions. Just get some clarity. Hopefully somebody watching this can have a little bit better understanding of the SAFE-T Act so we can have a better understanding of what laws are affecting us.
Great. Okay, so the first question of the House Bill 3653 is the Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act, or the SAFE-T Act. It was signed into law by Governor Pritzker on January of 2021, more than a year ago. Why is there so much media coverage of this bill now?
Well, that's the first question you ask yourself. Something that's signed a year ago, what's changed between now and a year ago, which is the election? The Republicans across the country are excited, man. They're listening to Trump. They want to take back the White House and Congress. So they're looking for anything to criticize. It's just like if you're in an argument with somebody, you're trying to find something to win your argument. So they've identified the SAFE-T Act as something that's good. Again, not perfect, but something that's good. And they want to try to demonize it and make it something bad. And the SAFE-T Act, because it's so large, because it's so comprehensive with regards to criminal justice, it's an easy target for them, and it requires us to talk. So the enemy is telling us, oh, this thing is bad, but they have not done anything good for us, for our community. But they say, oh, this thing is bad, it's terrible, the Democrats are nuts, and it doesn't make sense. And I want to do a little my part to explain why this is not bad with some facts.
I appreciate this. So I researched the bill, and it's more than 700 pages, but the only part of the bill that is highlighted in the media is the pretrial section that eliminates cash bail for offenses such as aggravated battery, DUI, aggravated fleeing, arson, burglary, drug-induced homicides, intimidation, kidnapping, robbery, second-degree murder, and also threatening a public official. Why would those offenses highlighted when we're talking about eliminating cash bail? Matter of fact, let's go back. Why was the decision for cash bail to be eliminated included in this bill?
Okay, because right now cash bail is about what? Cash. Do you have access to cash? Bail. So pre-trial, we got to start with pre-trial. Okay. Before you are found guilty, you are what? Innocent. Correct. Everybody in jail is innocent. Right. That is something I had to because we all know when you at the county, you in jail, right? The jail is not prison. Remember, jail is jail. You are innocent. You have not yet been proven guilty, because when you're proven guilty, you go on what? House arrest, or you go to prison, right? That's if you're guilty. If you're innocent, you go home. So everybody in county jail is technically innocent, okay? So pretrial release is saying you're gonna appear in front of a judge. The judge is gonna determine, are you dangerous? Did you just murder 5 people? You're probably not gonna get a bail, right? You're gonna stay at Cook County, and then they're gonna take you to Statesville or some prison, correct? That's the process. Right. But if you are not dangerous, what's gonna happen? You're gonna get a bail, and then you go home if you pay the bill, right? The problem is, what if your bail is $200 and you got $0? You're gonna sit in Cook County jail for 3 weeks until trial. Again, the question is that fair? The proponents of this legislation is saying, if you're not dangerous, why are you sitting in Cook County? You got into a fight at a bar, that's a battery charge. So sometimes we throw these charges out and we don't know what they even mean, right? We throw a charge, we say battery, we say intimidating the elected official. So I'm an elected official, I'm gonna have a town hall meeting, and somebody comes in there and we get into it. Maybe it was my fault, maybe it's his fault, we're not sure. The police show up, they arrest somebody, they charge them with intimidating an elected official. Do we want that person to sit in Cook County for 3 weeks and not get a bail if they don't have the money? Because again, bail is about money. And the question is, should freedom be about money? If you're dangerous, you stay in Cook County until you go to prison or you're free. If you're not dangerous, you get a bail. That's today. I'm not talking about the bill yet. Man, we're talking about what's going on today, because a lot of us don't get in trouble. You know what's going on. But I've been to bail court with friends and cousins and everything else, and I understand the process. If you go to Cook County, you're innocent. Okay. If you get a bail, you're not dangerous. Nobody getting a bail today is considered dangerous. That's why you get a bail. Now you stay at Cook County. Okay. Now you threw out one of them charges as second-degree murder.
Right.
And I researched it. I want people to research what second-degree murder is. Because remember, we don't make the laws for bad people. We make the laws for everybody. Even your cousin that you love. See, it's all right as long as it's him. When it becomes we make laws for everybody, the good kids, the bad kids. And that is the issue with making law. So let me give you a scenario of a second-degree murder. We got college students at Chicago State, at Columbia College. They kicking it on Weed Street. She runs over somebody on Austin Street, okay? That is second-degree murder. Okay? Second-degree murder is without consent. Do you want your little brother to sit in Cook County Jail for 3 weeks until trial if you don't feel the day they made a mistake? Of course not, right?
Of course not. And let me ask you this. You said 3 weeks. I've known people that sat in a Cook County jail for longer than that. So what is that 3 weeks period? Because I know the people's been sitting in jail till their case hasn't been resolved in 2 years, almost 3 years in some cases. When you say 3 weeks, is that normal before you get an opportunity to be released or to see a judge, or what's the difference?
Keep in mind, they have a schedule. So the people you're talking about, it could be continuouses, rescheduled cases. It could be more witnesses. It gets all about a case. It depends on what their situation is. And that's why when you're having these discussions about criminal justice, it's all situational. We can get arrested for the same thing, and we have 4 or 5 different situations. So the law has to be flexible. You don't want the law to be too rigid, because then we complain when good people, unfortunately do bad things. We definitely want to get the bad people. And if you visit the prisons, there's plenty of bad people in prison, or people that have been found guilty. But you gotta be cautious, because the law needs to be flexible. And that's why we put the onus on the judges, because I'm not a judge. So I want to make sure that a legal professional is taking a look at this situation. Right now, if I murder somebody and I get $1 million bail, as long as I can put up $100,000, I'm walking out, right? Does that make sense? That is a discussion. Does cash bail make sense? And we've been dealing with cash bail for so long that we used to it. You get arrested.
Let's talk about cash bail. So the only other state that has eliminated cash bail in certain instances is New Jersey, and they haven't had a lot of pushback from that, meaning a lot of negative consequences from doing that. Would you consider Illinois, if this act it does well over the next year, this legislation goes well over the next year, do you think Illinois would be kind of like a model for other states to consider removing cash bail?
I think so, again, because it's all about safety for me. Once somebody is deviant to the point where they no longer want to be a good citizen, they should be removed from society. But whether or not they have money or not is the issue. If you look at the federal courts, they don't deal in, and anybody that's been in trouble with the federal courts, there's no cash bail. Cash bail is a local thing. And remember, cash bail is always about what? Keeping people with money away from poor people. People with money who get in trouble don't want to go to the county. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up from a federal perspective, because I actually talked to a federal inmate at Thompson, and I asked them about what do they think about what's happening in Illinois from the state level. And this is what their reply was. It says, talked to a couple of guys here, and everybody feels like allowing people accused of violent crimes to just go free, even though they're innocent until proven guilty, is just ridiculous. So the one question is, how is that helping the crime rate in the city? It seems like it will do the exact opposite. What do you say to that?
We have to understand what's going on right now. Exactly what he's saying is happening now. It's happening in every case. But see, we're trying to equate safety with cash bail. And that's the first hurdle we have to get over. Right now, if I'm dangerous, as long as I can bail out, I'll be right back on the street after my bond hearing. The only thing keeping people that you think are dangerous is the fallacy of bail making you safe. Just because you get a bail doesn't mean you're not getting out. Okay. So what keeps people safe is the eventual conviction of guilty people, so they can go on. But before you are guilty, you're not guilty. And I think that's something that I think we have to be clear on. You're arrested, you're what? Innocent until proven guilty. Okay. And if you want to keep people in jail, we can do something. We can get rid of a pretrial release and say everybody accused of crime has to stay in jail, but nobody would support that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. And you don't know who's the bad or the good people. So bail is about money. If you got money, you get out. Is that fair? I think that's a discussion that's been going on. Make it about dangerous. Right now, is the judges can't keep a person that's dangerous. They got to give them a what? A bail. So exactly what your friend is talking about is the problem. If judges have more discretion, they can what? Keep a person that they deem as dangerous in jail, no matter what. And the law allows for that.
So it would be up to the judge's discretion if a person that was before them that was accused of one of these offenses in the act, the judge then would say, well, this person, based on their record, based on their history, may deem a threat to society, and the judge then could detain that person. Is that correct?
Yeah, now there's specific crimes that makes it easier for the judge to detain. Those other crimes, which it could be questionable, they have to do more to prove that the person has to stay. But ultimately, they could eventually reach the place where they want to keep that person detained. So again, it becomes the analysis of legal professionals and not bail. Your friend is talking about bail like it's helping. We know 100% bail is not helping. People get $10,000 bail, put $1,000 up, and they right back on the street. Okay? So bail doesn't even give the judge the flexibility to try to keep this person, because you got to give them a bail. You can't. Again,
so would you say this bill makes it more equitable across the board, regardless of who's accused of what? This bill would be, this act would make the legal system more equitable for everyone involved, meaning if you have money, you don't have money, if you're accused of something, it kind of evens the playing field.
Oh, without question. And that's why you see the opposition. The people, you got to see who's opposing something. Whenever you look at a law, who's upset at the law? The average everyday person, this is not going to affect them much, but this will affect people who say, I got money, it doesn't matter what crime I do, I'll eventually, I'll bail out. Now they have to think about it, because it's not about how much money you got. And some people are uncomfortable with that.
Makes sense. So let's talk about, that's one part of the law, that the part of the act as far as the non-detainable offenses, but there's other parts of this act that people are not aware of that actually holds the police officers more accountable. So can you talk to me about the use of force with police officers that is covered within this act? Hello?
Yeah, that's what it creates. And I'm just going through, because I want to make sure it is important that we fully understand. So I'm reading, I didn't want to guess.
Right.
So it creates a statewide use of force standardization act, stating that it's intended to establish a statewide use of force standards for law enforcement agencies. So it's a lot in this bill that's looking to just standardize where there's use of force, because we know the vast majority of police officers are high quality individuals, but you always got the trouble folks who
troublemakers.
Yeah, who need to be doing something else. I mean, there's tons of things in this bill.
It expands the use of changes and guidelines for body cameras worn, and who may access, review, or delete footage. It also expands officer training on topics including crisis intervention, de-escalation, use of force, high-risk traffic stops, implicit bias, racial and ethnic sensitivity training, and emergency response, among other things. It seems as if this bill now is holding police officers in the state of Illinois accountable, and in a way that's never been done. This is like groundbreaking criminal reform legislation.
But keep in mind, when you say hold on police accountable, the vast majority of police are wonderful. You don't make laws for good police officers like this, because the police, for the vast majority that I've come across, are high quality. It's really about anybody that's taking a job of authority and taking advantage of it. We don't want teachers sleeping with kids. We don't want politicians abusing their power. Anybody with authority, we want them to take. I don't want the guy fixing the street to not fix my street right, but fix another community right. So it's not, everything that's in here is really about showing honor to good police officers and making sure the bad ones have a hard time. So,
and one of the other parts of this legislation, as far as complaints and misconduct, there's a part of the bill, and I'm paraphrasing, that if an officer does injure a suspect within an interaction, that officer also has to give aid to the suspect as well. So, for instance, if an officer discharges a firearm and strikes a citizen or a suspect, that police officer, it's an obligation for them to administer aid to the suspect. And that's something that had never been done. As well as if a police officer is assaulting a suspect, it's another police officer's job, or police officer that's witnessing that, to intervene. I'm sure these weren't popular with your constituents within the police, unions and boards.
Again, I wasn't in each and every discussion. I talked to some of our local folks. Some of the good police officers doing this anyway. And I think whenever you look, we're good law-abiding citizens of the South Side, West Side, wherever we live in Chicago. The vast majority of us do the right thing automatically. So most police officers, it's not personal. It's a service. It's business. They're taking care of people. They tell the guys, "Hey, I got to arrest you because you committed a crime. I'm not attacking you. It's not personal." Look how many interactions our police have around the year, and there's very few actual incidents if you look at the statistics. So a lot of this stuff is just making sure that the bad individuals parading as police officers don't have flexibility. But most police officers, it is what it is. They take care of people.
So on January 2023, those who are currently detained for those offenses outlined in the bill will be released pending the outcome of their court case. Some critics say that one of the reasons this bill was enacted because there's no more room in Illinois prisons, and this bill is a way to reduce the prison population at the expense of law-abiding citizens. How do you respond to that?
How many of these individuals, again, pre-trial release means you're aware. Is anybody in pre-trial release in prison? That's a question.
No.
Everybody in pre-trial release is where?
They're at home or wherever they are.
They're in jail.
Oh, they're in jail.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Prison is where you go when you're guilty. Jail is where you go when you're awaiting trial. Everybody in jail is innocent.
Okay.
There is no guilty people.
Would you say that, was there any truth to the fact that this may be a way to reduce the jail population?
Well, again, everybody in jail is eventually going to cycle out once they get to their case. It's all about awaiting their court case or waiting for them to plea out. So a lot of this is nonsense. Whoever said that, they have an agenda. Just because somebody says something that sounds intelligent doesn't mean it's true. One thing about us is that we can get to the truth where you want to get to the truth. Right. So the person that said that, it was nonsense. And that's why we have these discussions. 100% nonsense. This is about pre-trial release process. And the current process is okay to some. If you got money, you're getting out. If you're poor, you're staying in. What does that have to do with safety? Because to me, if it's a poor, dangerous person, I want to figure out how to keep them in. Or if they do get a pre-trial release, we want to monitor them. We want to make sure this person comes back to court to receive justice. So what they have in their pocketbook is irrelevant. We have people right now, hundreds of people walking around Illinois who are able to bail out in their own murder charges. The evidence is mounting against them. They're murderers, but they were able to bail out. Why are they able to walk around with someone else with the same charges sitting in jail? Because if it's about safety, they both should sit in there. If the judge feels like they're a danger to society. So we just, again, pre-trial release about removing economics, but it's not changing the fact that they still have to come back to court and they still, they can't go over to Acapulco and Mexico and run away. They still have to return on their court date. They're just not sitting down in jail.
So I want to ask you about the part of the bill that talks about certification and decertification of police officers. The changes in the Illinois State Police Merit Board composition and reporting to the board. It creates the Illinois Law Enforcement Certification Review Panel, enhances automatic and discretionary termination of officers. What is a police certification and decertification? Explain that to me.
Again, it's all about, we have a lot of police departments and you just want to have symmetry and standards across the board. I travel all over the state. I want every police officer to have proper training, whether I'm in Waukegan or down in Southern Illinois. And a lot of this is about unification of our police officers. You want to make sure that they're all properly trained, It's a lot of money that we put in the budget for police training. We make sure they're properly compensated. The Illinois General Assembly has been very, very supportive of police, and we're going to continue to be. But all of this stuff that you go down the list, the merit board, increasing the merit board, police merit board, again, having police professionals and experienced person talking about it, having the merit board, talk about what's going on within the police industry, within the police folks, conduct database to make sure people know what's going on. Because you have bad individuals parading as police officers, and they'll hop around to different places. So you want to make sure there's a lot of communication. The law enforcement certification review panel, again, is individuals who work in the law enforcement space who can review and make, recommendation, terminating.
So this isn't a defund the police type of bill. In this bill, there is some funding that comes from that fund the police that go to different training for police officers.
But we do that all the time. It's millions of dollars that go to police training. We support the police compensation and training. One of the best states in the country in regards to supporting the police. So it's not even close. So that's just a fact. Nothing in this bill is about attacking the police. Now, again, if you're a person that's participating in questionable behavior while working as police, you may be concerned about some of that shit. But the everyday police officers you see, it doesn't matter. They're doing the right thing every day. 99.9% of them, my view.
So I think you cut off. Can you hear me?
No, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So we know that poverty and violence go hand in hand. Poor people get frustrated. There's a violence involved with that. And I work with different youth organizations across the city of Chicago, like Life Builders, Eric Arnold, Chicago Craig, Curtis Toller, Phil Bradley with Nonviolence Works, and Vitel Thomas of Greenwich, others. We do things that work with the youth. However, there is a mental health crisis here in Chicago, and on top jobs in our communities. I grew up on the southeast side of Chicago. I think that you did too.
Yeah.
What is being done to further the mental health crisis issue, as well as jobs for our youth?
Yeah, well, not specific to this job. That is an overall community push. I think some good things have been done. I know on a state level, we're shoring up our budget so we can support mental health funding. So there's a lot of organizations that do mental health. I know there's a lot of nonviolent organizations that we've put hundreds of millions of dollars out that they've received. I don't know if your specific organization, but through ASEJA, through DCEO, we're funding nonviolent organizations like never before under Governor Pritzker. When you look throughout his budget, we're attempting to do that. And I think we as a community should continue to push. We got these aldermen and mayors in the city that's running for re-election. We need more African-American firefighters. We need more African-American police officers. We need more African-Americans working in these city departments so they can take those $100,000 jobs and live in Avalon Park and the Calumet Heights. So there's so much we can do, but as far as the state budget and my specific role as a state rep, we've done a lot to push money out of the state budget to various organizations. And we hope that it makes an effect. Every time you hear good news, you hear some bad news. So the goal is how can we make it, 8 good stories and 2 bad. And every year make that bad story smaller and smaller, but it's strategy. You got to reach different people different ways. Some guys need a job. Some kids just need a good community center. We need improvements in Chicago, so we need to demand more. And kind of what you're doing for me, explanations. All elected officials should be talking about what's going on and solutions for the neighborhood and their role. My role as a state rep to get state resources and state laws to help improve the community, and I'm trying to do that.
So there's a lot of fake news. There's a Chicago City Wire that's been the new paper that's been circulated somehow throughout the city and the state. And one of the people, State Senator Charles DeWitt from St. Charles. I'm sorry, State Senator Donald DeWitt. He's a Republican from St. Charles. He started a petition to repeal the SAFE-T Act. Would you consider the SAFE-T Act ideal as it is, or there are some things that you feel could be amended?
Yeah, that's things that could be amended. Total repeal, I don't see that making any sense because there's a lot of good things. But every bill we can argue back and forth. That's the joy of policy creation. You know, I ain't never seen a bill that's 100% perfect. Somebody can say you can tweak this and that, but that's why you put the ideas out there. Our Illinois complies statute, state law is a legal living document. We change the state law every year. So if it's a piece of it that people kind of like, I don't like that part, you know, it's always flexible and changing. So don't see state law like the U.S. Constitution. That doesn't change much. It's hard to change U.S. Constitution. But state laws constantly change as people's views change. So yeah, input is important. Conversations are ongoing, but he has to identify what he doesn't like. See, it's easy to say, repeal the whole thing, I hate it. No, tell us what you don't like. He wanted to keep poor people locked in jails. If that's what you want, he needs to say that. I want my rich white kids who make mistakes to go home. I want poor kids to go to jail. If that's what you want, say it. But you can't say, I just don't like the SAFE-T Act. Anybody who tells you that, ask them what they don't like. And it's gonna be around that bail. They like poor people who locked up. That makes them feel better, but it doesn't help.
But the Orland Park mayor says that this is like akin to the purge, right? Yeah. People are going to run amok, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I think he's running for something.
He's running for Congress.
Okay, so he's running for Congress.
He's running for Congress. So he's trying to hustle a position and use violence. Again, I grew up in Chicago. I don't remember the good old days. We've had violence in Chicago since I can remember, and it was terrible in the 90s. And I don't know what world people was living in, but it was terrible. 1999 is still the worst documented murders in the city of Chicago. And 1977 is number 2. And I was born in 1985. So if you remember when there wasn't no crime in Chicago, please tell me what year that was. We've had issues here.
There was never a time there wasn't crime.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. But we've always had something consistent. Consistent male unemployment in Chicago since before I was born, right? 30–40% male unemployment. We've had poverty. We had, gymnasiums in our park districts with no air conditioning, right? We've had a fire department with no black people on it, right? I can name you things that we've consistently had that's been an issue and is creating issues that exist now in our community. How do we change those things? And why do we talk about those things? Because I think if we fix some of these long-standing problems, then you'll see some of the crime fix. Because remember, we locked up a whole bunch of brothers. Remember that, 1994?
Indeed.
Yeah, so if I want to stop the crime, and if locking up brothers was the solution, I'd be down for it. But remember, Congressman Rush and all of them, you saw the articles with them apologizing for voting for the crime bill. So it's hard for me to support locking up my brothers when we know it don't work. I can't take Robitussin to cure cancer, right?
Indeed.
Robitussin does not cure cancer. I don't care how much Robitussin you drink. It does not cure cancer. You need chemo, surgery, and rehabilitation. And our communities need surgery, and they keep giving us Robitussin.
So now that I found out this bill isn't the Purge Law. It's about equity. If a person does get accused of any of these crimes, they'll be able to be released just as anybody who had money. So it makes it equitable. There's also police reform and holding them accountable. And again, just for those bad actors within the police, the police forces across the state. And I couldn't understand why certain state reps and certain senators would be against, because this affects all 102 counties in Illinois. So there's going to be a lot of poor people, according to, if we're just talking about people who can't afford bail, released. Why wouldn't they want their citizens in their district released, regardless if they had the money to bail out or not? I mean, I don't see why they would be against that, because it just doesn't affect African Americans. We are more affected. There's an intense amount of oppression that we deal with. However, this affects everyone in the state, and for certain senators and representatives to not be behind letting some of their citizens out who have been innocent until proven guilty, it kind of confuses me.
Yeah, but keep in mind, they love to say release, 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 right? Some of the folks who the judges deem to be dangerous won't be released. There's no automatic release provision. There's no open the door. Because remember, everybody's case is different. Some people had very, very high bails for a reason. Okay. So now the judge will have to see it could be a charge in which they're restricted to bail. Remember, we listed in the bill certain charges that were automatic that the judge can deny a bail. It's just not every single charge. They left flexibility in the bill for charges that could be questioned. You know, murder and they found the gun and he's on camera. You know what I mean? That's a different situation from, you know, fighting somebody at the bar, you know, like, or, you know, look at the, or got into an argument with State Rep Marcus Evans at a community meeting. You know, those are not the same. And I think that's why those charges were not automatic for bail denial, but the more serious ones, the clear serious crimes, judges can go ahead and deny bail as they're doing today. So this fear mongering doesn't make sense when you walk it through, but they know everybody not going to do this. So they're like, we can scare enough people, you know, because most people are not going to talk about it.
And that's why I'm really honored that you took the time. You are a public official, but public officials can choose to speak to the public or not, and you've chosen to speak to the public. I really appreciate this opportunity to kind of break this law down, because once I unpacked it, I realized it's going to make people who are disenfranchised, it's going to put us in a better position. Well, you know, and it's important to know what's in the law. I did not know so much about police accountability, which is something that you know, we've been striving for over forever, right? And this the SAFE-T Act, I think, is something that should be looked at more in depth, and this is the reason why we're having these conversations. I really appreciate you taking this time. Is there anything else that you want the people to know about this act and why you sponsored and supported it?
Yeah, and again, I want to give credit to my colleagues who were the chief sponsors and creators of the law. And it's a very detailed criminal justice bill with a lot of really good things in it and some things that everybody didn't like. But those where bills are, and you talk about it and work it out. Senator L.G. Sims and State Rep Justin Slaughter were the sponsors, but I supported it because of the bail reform initiatives and the police assistance initiative. A lot of our police are going through mental health. Are you hearing about all these police officers committing suicide and going through depression? There's tools in this bill to support local mental health for police officers. So the bill was so robust and had so much support. That's why it passed and was signed. But again, those people like Senator DeWitt, like the guy that's up in Orland that's trying to run for Congress, they're trying to use this bill for political expediency. They don't care about what's in it. They're just trying to hustle politics. I think it's wrong. I think it's terrible, but that's the reality. Lying ain't illegal, right? It is. They can do what they want to do. But this bill does not change the criminal justice system. Make some improvements, and I think the improvements will be good. And if people don't think so, you know, we can talk about it. But when you talk about bail reform, when you talk about cash bail, if you support cash bail, you support keeping poor people locked up. And if that's what you feel, that's what you feel. But you got to say what you feel. See, sometimes people like to talk around what they really want. You got to ask a person, do you support cash bail? That means you support keeping poor people locked up. And what those poor people look like? You know, so that means
like you and I.
So you love keeping poor Black people locked up. But rich white folk, we don't want them in jail with the GDs. You know, he don't want them Orland Park kids that get that's fighting at the bar, you know, the ones that get arrested for fighting or meth. He don't want them in there. They gonna come cash out. See?
Right.
But the kids that can't afford it. See, you got to see what people are saying. And it's my job to unpack it for you. Everybody that's dangerous should stay in the county, not just the poor Black ones. Keep them all in there. If you're dangerous, I don't care what you look like or how much money your daddy got. Stay in jail if you're dangerous. And that's what this bill is saying. And it's scaring them. And that's why you're hearing the issue from them. But they don't want their nieces and nephews. They want the bail out. You get rid of the cash, now they got to convince the judge. And now it gets a little tricky. Because they may have to spend a little time, you know, in the Cook County Jail. And it's scaring them. You know?
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'd like to follow up with this, maybe later on down the road, a few months down the road, if it's possible, to try to get an idea of once the bill is enacted and we give it some time and maybe double back on this, or maybe a new issue. Hopefully I have the opportunity to reach out to you. But I was really honored that you took the time. You saw my post on Facebook. You said, well, this guy's, been in the southeast side of Chicago for majority of his life. He has an audience. He wants to talk, and you're not afraid to talk about it. And thank you so much for being like that. And I hope that we can have another discussion about this sometime soon.
No, thank you. Thank you what you do, man. We got so many phenomenal Black men, brothers in our communities doing good work. And my job is to be the state rep guy to bring back information, communicate. We should be communicating more. And I see you around. We don't always talk as much.
Right.
But, I love what you do. And anytime you want to talk about state issues, I can explain it. And I'll explain the things that people like, don't like. It's all about putting the facts out there, because I'm not trying to talk here to twist anybody's arm and make you like this, but we don't want to skate around the facts. I got a friend today still say, man, I like cash bail. Keep some of them people that can't afford it in jail. That's your view. And I don't, remember, I work for the community, so I don't think it's my job to tell the community what should do. We made a decision in General Assembly, but let's say people don't like it. They want to keep poor people locked up. I'm not going to let you, act like you're not saying that. If you want to keep poor people locked up, you got to keep it 100 with me and say, hey, man, I'm all right with keeping poor people locked up. But you ain't about to tell me that, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not about to.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-righteousness in it, man.
That's what I'm saying. You bogus, just be bogus. Just say, I want to keep poor people locked up. But don't tell me, man, I just about safety and blah, 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 and releasing people. No, Senator DeWitt want to keep poor Black people in jail. That's what he wants.
Yeah, I think that this is really this is something good for poor Moors, for poor African Americans, people who don't have the funding. And a lot of people put their house on the market. Their grandmothers putting to keep somebody out of jail, and that's really sources out our community when Moorish people, African American people are having a hard time already. So I see it. I see it now. I wanted to be non-biased in this conversation, but when I unpack it, I see that this could do a lot for people of African descent all across the state, and poor people, period, of whatever nationality, because it's just not a Caucasian, African American thing. It's everybody else in the state, Asians, Indians, whatever your nationality is. I think that it helps everybody once people look at this act and break it down. So thanks again, man, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Oh, I'll see you soon, man. We get together. All the best to you and everybody's listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best.